Good morning, class. So today we start the revenue under the Chola administration or under the Chola Empire. Up till now we saw the Chola administration mainly under Rajaraja I and Rajendra Chola I. These two being the prominent kings of the Chola dynasty. I want you to open up to page number 71. So let us first look at the revenue under the Chola kingdom. From where did they earn their taxes or revenue? The revenue of the Chola kingdom came from taxes on land and the produce of the land. Not just the produce, but the taxes on land and tax on trade, that the business, not just inland trade, but overseas trade as well. Part of the revenue was kept for the king. The rest was used on public works such as the building of roads and tanks, on salaries of officials, on paying for the upkeep of the army, and on the building of temples. Now see, the revenue which was kept aside for the king was for his sole use only. It was not used in maintaining the army or paying the officials of the different administrative machinery of the state. So from this itself you can make out how booming the trade was and how prosperous the people were under these two kings, especially Rajaraja I and Rajendra Chola I, and on the building of temples. So all welfare work which was being taken up was taken up from the revenue specifically kept for these things. The taxes on land were collected by the officials from the village councils. So we learned about the local self-government, where the village administration was carried out not by the government but by the villagers themselves. So they only were responsible for collecting the taxes for different purposes and handing them over to the different authorities. Now coming to the Chola art. The Chola rulers were great conquerors and efficient administrators. They loved art and architecture. They built temples, canals, roads, cities and palaces. So when the kingdom is at peace, it has a strong ruler. So people generally, their livelihood is ensured, their protection, their safety is ensured. So they can always indulge in art and architecture and other things and welfare of the citizens. Most of the Chola temples were built in the Dravidian style. Early Chola temples were simple structures. Later temples became bigger and more grand. So we have learnt about the vimans, the towers and the huge courtyards. We also learned that these courtyards or these temples, they housed schools within themselves and carried on a lot of welfare work. The art of making stone and metal images had made rapid progress under the Chola rulers. Now, the Nataraj is one of the famous, most important example of the art and architecture during the Chola Empire. Now, the Cholas excelled in making images of gods and goddesses. The bronze image of Lord Shiva is Nataraj, the Lord of Dance, is an excellent work of art. The image of Nataraj has been described as the cultural epitome of the Chola period. Now, with this, children, we have come to the end of the Chola Empire. Now, let us quickly do a quick thorough study, not a thorough study, we'll just look at the salient points. Now when we talk about the extent of the Chola kingdom, it was the southern part of the Indian peninsula situated south of the Krishna river. Now this region was home to three powerful kingdoms, the Cheras, the Pandyas and the Cholas, and the most powerful of all the three were the Cholas. The Chola Empire arose in the 9th century, brought under its control a large part of the Indian peninsula or the southern part of the Indian peninsula. Now, Cholas developed a powerful navy, which we saw later on. Though Rajaraja I was only able to conquer the northern part of Sri Lanka, but his son Rajendra Chola I, he conquered the annexed and conquered the entire Sri Lanka island of Sri Lanka and the Maldive Islands. Now, the Cholas defeated the Pallavas of Kanchi and weakened the Pandyans, bringing the Tamil country or Tunda Mandala under their control. Now, the sources, coming to the sources from which we get to know about the Chola Empire, Chola dynasty, or the political history or administration, are the inscriptions which were found where? On the pillars. These texts were inscribed on the pillars of temples, on the walls of temples. Then there were copper plate inscriptions which were found, and on these are the grants and the achievements of the kings was recorded. Now, this we have done. Now, the copper plate grants known as the copper plate grants were known as Anbal and Karandi, as well as Kanyakumari stone inscription. They, best of all is, they give us a long list of rulers indicating the origin of the Chola dynasty. Right? The most important kings. Now, these plates were written in Sanskrit and Tamil as well. The most important kings of the Chola dynasty being Rajaraja I and Rajendra Chola I, his son. Now, the inscriptions, they provided us the following information. The Uttaramerur inscriptions give information on the village administration, taxation and land revenue. Then when we talk about the Leyland Grant, this has been inscribed. These are the records of gifts and endowments to temples and Brahmins, and they have been inscribed on copper plate inscriptions. They are famously known as the Leyden Grant. Now, of Parantaka Chola and the house and those of Parkesri Uttam Chola, then they inform us about the construction of a temple or the setting up of a new image of the deity. Right now we are talking about the various inscriptions which have been found on copper plates on pillars and walls of temples. They were in Sanskrit and Tamil. Now, some inscriptions have royal orders on taxation and land revenue. Then resolutions of village assemblies, the decisions taken, the judgments delivered against persons guilty of theft. So they tell us a lot about what was going on during the Chola dynasty. Inscriptions on temple walls served the purpose of public registration, such as the record of sales, mortgages and other forms of transfers of property rights in village lands. The Brihadeshwar temple, now this is one of the most important example of the Dravidian architecture which was practiced, in which this temple was built under the Chola dynasty. The gateway of the temple was called Gopuram. The main shrine was known as Garbhagriha, where the images of gods and goddesses were kept. Mandap was the audience hall where people gathered for prayers. Then the chief feature of Chola temples are their massive vimans or towers and spacious courtyards. This we have done. Brihadeshwar temple is also known as Rajarajeshwar temple, dedicated to Lord Shiva. It is located at Thanjavur and was built by the Chola king Rajaraja I. Then most important is the shrine houses a gigantic Shiva Lingam. The temple has many structures such as a Nandi pavilion. This Shiva Lingam was cut out in a monolithic rock, that is one single huge rock. Then we come to the political history, the main two kings being Rajaraja I and his son Rajendra Chola I. Chola ruler Vijayalaya established Chola rule in Tamil land with Thanjavur as his capital. After his death, his grandson Parantaka I became the king. He conquered Madurai and defeated the Pandyas. By the 11th century AD, the Chola power had reached the height of its glory. Now, Rajaraja I, a brilliant general, campaigned in many directions, attacked the kingdoms of Pandyas and Chera, annexed parts of Deccan and overran Vengi. He did this in order to prove the strength of the Cholas. Now he took some territories of Mysore, Travancore and Coorg, the coasts of Kerala, Kerala, Ceylon and Maldive Islands had become rich. So these also he annexed. So lot of foreign exchange or trade was coming through West Asian countries. And India during the times of Rajaraja I was sending textiles, spices and precious stones to these countries. Now Rajaraj was aware of the importance of controlling the sea, so he had a massive navy and took out a naval expedition, attacked both Sri Lanka and Maldives, but was only able to capture the northern half of Sri Lanka. He built the Rajarajeshwar temple of Lord Shiva. This we have known. This we have already learnt about. Now, under his rule, Cholas became the supreme power in southern India. Now coming to his son, Rajendra Chola. Now, Rajendra succeeded his father. He continued with his father's policies and he added on to annexed more kingdoms or more land to the existing kingdom. His campaigns were daring. He led the army himself. He was not the one to shy away. And then see, when it is said that he marched up to the east coast of India through Odisha and up to the Ganga river, and thereafter his generals took over the charge of the army. The Chola army defeated Mahipal, king of Bengal, and to commemorate this victory he adopted the title of Gangaikond and built a new capital called Gangaikond Cholapura. His most daring campaign was in Southeast Asia. So over here the merchants of Southeast Asia were creating trouble for the Indian merchants. So they appealed to Rajendra Chola for help, and as a result Rajendra Chola gathered a huge army, sent out a huge navy and defeated the Srivijay king, who had under his control the Straits of Malacca. After that, the Indian trade flourished over there and brought in a lot of revenue for the king. Then we come to the Chola administration, where we learnt about the central government. The king was the important person in the Chola administration and all authority was vested in him, but he had the council of ministers to advise him in different matters. Then we learnt about the central government, which was directly under the king, looked after external defense, internal peace and order, and promotion of general prosperity and cultural progress of the empire. This was in a whole. These policies of the king in relation to these matters, internal peace and order, promotion of general prosperity and cultural progress of the empire, was in detail carried on by the provincial government and the local self-government. Under the provincial government, the Chola Empire was divided into mandalams. These were further divided into Valanadu and Nadu. Princes of the royal family were appointed governors of provinces. Now, local self-government. At the village level, the villagers, they had their own councils, and these villages had three types of village assemblies, namely the Ur, the Sabha and the Nagaram. Now, the Ur was the common type of assembly of the villages where the land was held by all classes of people. Sabha was an exclusive Brahmin assembly of the villages where all the land belonged to the Brahmins. The Nagaram was an assembly of merchants and belonged to localities where traders and merchants were in a dominant position. Now, the temples during the Chola kingdom played an important role in the cultural aspect of the society. They ran schools, they took on welfare activities, they provided work to a large number of people. They made sure that their workers were provided with food, clothing and housing facilities. They took upon themselves the most important work of educating the subjects of the Chola kingdom. The temple, the priests of the temples themselves were the local teachers, and there were no separate schools. Both Sanskrit and Tamil was taught. The teaching of Sanskrit was important as religious teaching was in Sanskrit, and such texts as the Veds were also being taught. Now, with this, we have revised the entire chapter, and we have come to the end of the chapter. Next, we will be uploading the written work for this chapter. Please make sure you do the entire thing. You just do not have to rely on the question answers that we are uploading. A thorough reading of the chapter has to be done, because during your boards, anything from in between the chapter can be tested. So please give it a thorough reading. Till that time, stay safe, stay blessed. Thank you.